What I have for today is really talk about my journey, all the way, coming from India, working at Chrysler, starting my company, leaving the company, starting another company, and on the profit side, on the nonprofit, charitable, and then also on the movie making. And I think that's all the time I would have, because anytime I go beyond, Wayne is going to cut me off. So the passion for cars brought me to the US and brought me to Detroit. Growing up in India, I was always fascinated with so many cars. Back in the days I was growing up, there were not that many cars in India, so it's always a fascination to look at the automotive industry. That brought me here. I finished my master's at Wayne State in mechanical engineering. Back then, my only goal and desire in life at that time was to come to America, the land of opportunities, pursue a degree, maybe work for an automotive company, maybe get a $100,000 job, maybe if that $150,000. And I thought that is the highest level of achievement I can accomplish. But as you would go through today, you would see, this afternoon, you would see, I have gotten much more beyond what I have even dreamt and in my journey. So I started working for Chrysler, and then I realized somewhere down the line, about 6, 7, 8 years into working at Chrysler, that the big corporate culture mindset was not really part of my DNA. Because I'm all about making an impact. And when you work for a major corporation, you cannot see your impact. Because whatever you do, it depends on who you work for. You may be skilled, you may have all the talent, but if you're not part of the clique, if you're not part of the group, you don't go anywhere. And then also every 4 years, 5 years, depending on which company you work for, it keeps changing. And so I jokingly always say that, I started working for a manager called Phil, and then, so I worked with him for 4 years. End of the, 4 years, I was asking, hey, what do I need to do to get promoted? What is the next step for me? I realized long enough that they don't have plan for you. They only have plan for themselves. I realized we have to create that plan. Of course, some people are part of the clique, and if you're part of the clique, God bless you. But if you're not part of the clique, and you don't have a plan, because that's bad news, because they don't have a plan for you. And so during the journey, it kept going over and over. Every 4 years, I went through the same process. And end of the 13 years, I said, boy, this is not going to work for me. I've seen, major companies is really, if you do an amazing job, the maximum you would get is 2 things. One, pat on the back, photo opportunity with the president and CEO. You get lucky, you may get a dinner for 2 coupon at maybe one of the restaurants. If that's going to make you happy, if that's going to keep you excited, keep doing it. If that's not going to keep you happy, then you got to do something else. So I talked to my boss and said, hey, Vaughn, I'm getting bored. Yes, I have a golden handcuff. Yes, I have a pension. Yes, I have a free car. Yeah, I can even do your job, in 2 hours every day. And then remaining 6 hours, what am I supposed to do? Twiddle my thumb and collect the paycheck? That was not in my DNA. So I was becoming restless. So I asked him, if I quit this job, I go and pursue entrepreneurship and come back. I mean, if it doesn't work, will you take me back? He said, of course I will take you back. You've been a role model employee, so that's not an issue at all. So then I thought to myself, what is the risk here? The risk is not leaving Chrysler. It just struck to me at the time, and then I never looked back, and then the rest is history. So I left Chrysler after 13 years, and then started this entrepreneurial journey, starting with nothing. Only thing I jokingly say is that short of stealing, I did everything. Using my credit card, took out my 401k, took out the home equity line to really keep the company going. Because what happens is, when you want to grow a company, you don't have the money. And nobody gives you the money, including the bankers. Yes, we talk about we are promoting entrepreneurship, but the problem is, that the banking system right now that we have is only reactive. It only looks back what you've done in the last 3-4 years. Heck, when you're starting a company, how would you have the history? It's like finding the first job. Everybody is saying, do you have experience? And somebody got to give them an experience. And so to me, then I kept on going, and the banks would turn me down. So I have to use my resources to really keep moving forward. Now times are different. 10 years later, the bankers who decline are calling me almost every day, can you change your bank? I said, for what? No, we'll have some lunch. And then I said, for do what? After that, what do we do? I don't want to change the bank. So what I realized in life is that sometimes when you want things, you won't get it. When you don't want things, you get it. And to me, that's the irony of life. That's also irony of business. And I keep seeing the trend over and over. So I went through all that. So early years, it was a great struggle. The other struggle I also realized is that when you start a company, you don't have customers. And the big boys won't talk to you. They want the history again. And how are you supposed to have the customers when you're starting the company? So it's a struggle, but you have to find a way to go through. So the strategy that I utilize is really to start, okay, what I'm going to do is buy companies that are not doing well. And through that process, I was able to get into much bigger companies. And so I did an acquisition in 2007, 2008. And then through that, I was able to grow from nothing, from $500,000, I took them to $10 million. People call me hero at that time because, I came with nothing, and I quickly did. But as life would have it, as business would have it, recession came around. 2009 and 10, 60% of my business was exposed to one customer. And when you are that much attached to one customer, if they sneeze, you catch cold. There's too much of exposure in there. So our company went down, and that's one of the things that I want to really talk about is really how do you use your setback? How do you use your adversity? How do you turn that around into an opportunity is really what I did going through the process. So from 10 million, now, the banks started coming because Chrysler started going into the bankruptcy process. And the 60% of the revenues are coming from them. And we got some loan to really buy a couple of companies. And now we started making less money because, the Chrysler is shrinking. And not only that, our account receivable at Chrysler was getting delayed because of the bankruptcy process. All on a sudden, from a hero, I started becoming zero because the banks were coming after me. And the first thing they say, hey, we are thinking about putting a lien on your home. We are thinking about doing X, Y, and Z. We are thinking about doing X, Y, and then a month later, they wanted to do it. So the pressure started building upon. And that was my lowest point in my whole entrepreneurial journey is really when somebody touches your home and things go wrong, they can take your home away. So that is the low point. So I thought to myself, I'm not going to hunker down. I'm not going to slow down. That's when I realized that, I used to put a small note card in front of my table every day. And then I started putting the dollar sign in there and say, how am I going to turn this around? What should I do? I started cutting down all the expenses, and then I started working on diversification of the company, not just attached to one company, not just attached to one city, not attached to one industry. It's really like, diversifying into different things. And then, 10 months later, Chrysler started coming out of the bankruptcy, and then the economy started to grow. And then as Chrysler started to pick up, we were able to pick that right. And then the rest is history. So from 10 million, we were able to take it to $25 million, and then things kept going and going. And so I always say it is really the first $5 million is where you struggle the most. And the once you hit 25, and the once 30 and 50, then it's almost like then most of the teething issues are gone away. It's like this, it's like a baby, right? Teething problem, toddlers are creating, throwing a lot of temper tantrums. But then, once they get out of the college, life becomes hunky-dory. Same thing in the business. It's no different if you look at it that way. And so that's what happened. And so then, end of the 10 years, now I'm taking back to 2005 to 2016, 11 years, I started getting bored because entrepreneurship, whether you know it or not, it's not about making money. Earlier I spoke at an event, I also shared this statistic. The statistic is this, that beyond $85,000, the amount of happiness that you get with the money diminishes substantially. In other words, $85,000 is where you're going to get the, if you're below $85,000, you're going to have a lot of issues, in a sense, to have happiness. But beyond $85,000, whether you have $1 million or $2 million, the percentage of improvement in happiness diminishes substantially. And I realized that because now I'm running a company, $50 million, $55 million company, so that's when I decided, I got this money, what am I want to do? I mean, I've already done everything. Only thing left is to scale the company, and that was not exciting me. So then I started, okay, I'm going to quit this company, from the day-to-day operations. And so this year I started the company called Kyyba Accelerator, focusing on disruptive technologies. I also set up a venture fund, which is going to focus on it. But going back to the point I was talking about, the happiness is really that when all said and done, meaning when you die, that's what I'm talking about, when all said and done, nobody takes the money with them. And so I thought to myself, as long as I have enough money to ride one car, stay in a home, have a food and shelter, and have a decent money to have vacation, whatnot, rest of them. Beyond that, I wanted to make an impact, and to me, I want to make impact in 3 different areas. One area is technology, second is investment, and third is social. And so that's really what I'm focusing on, is to leave a legacy behind, because that's really where we're going to make the mark. And so with that in mind, on the technology side, I started focusing on this Kyyba Accelerator, is really to create new companies using my experience, lessons learned, all the scars from the battlefield. I want to help the budding entrepreneurs and at the same time help the local economy. And that's what I've been doing, and that's why I'm considering myself as a serial entrepreneur to really start one business to another, take the success and the lessons learned and keep replicating. The second thing I want to talk about, I know Rotary is known for service, and I'm going to talk about service. And the other organization that I volunteer my time is called TIE. In fact, we are hosting one of the largest entrepreneurial conferences in Michigan next week. I think some of the cards are there. So the idea is to foster entrepreneurship in our region, and we are focusing on many disruptive technologies such as mobility, digital health, artificial intelligence, financial technologies, smart cities, you name it. Anything that is disruptive, we focus on them. And the idea, again, is to really, if you look back, our city and state, it was completely written off. Time magazine wrote an article in 2009 as a dead city, and now, we are coming back from the ashes. Now times are different. Now Detroit is one of the cool city, right? And so with the, Little Caesars Arena in there, with the Pistons going in there, the Wings going in there, with the nightlife there, with the music, all the action is happening. So we are also hosting our conference at the heart of the city to really revitalize and bring them back. So one other thing I want to share is that I don't know how many of you know that Detroit and Michigan was the center of the universe not too long ago, exactly 100 years ago. There was no Silicon Valley. We were the Silicon Valley, right? And we put the first road on the planet Earth. Anybody know what that road was? You got it. And we put the cars on the road. And I keep sending this message over and over because that is very relevant. Because we were the innovators, we were the disruptors, but somewhere along the line, we got complacent. I might even add, we became lazy. And so what I'm trying to say is, through this conference, is to rekindle those spirits already within us, that fire in the belly, that tenacity we already have, and then bring them back is really what we are trying to do, entrepreneurship. Because 60 to 80% of the jobs are being created by small businesses. Many would think it's not really the Microsoft, it's not really the Chryslers, it's not the big companies. They do create more jobs, but they don't, the number of jobs, the percentage of jobs are created more by the small businesses, and that's why we are focusing on this entrepreneurship. Now I want to move into the charitable one, I think, and I have a couple elements I want to talk about. The charitable one is much in line with what the Rotary Club is subscribing to. And so I believe in giving back. In fact, in the conference, I'm also calling upon all successful entrepreneurs, all successful business people to give back. Because that's how we can create the wealth creation cycle going. We got to break the vicious cycle of keeping everything with us. Because that's not how the capitalist economy is going to grow. And so we got to break that vicious cycle and create more of a virtuous wealth creation cycle, and that's what we are focusing on. And so I'm trying to give back in two different areas. One, I'm also focusing a lot of activities in India, especially for women, especially for girls, where the girls that are orphaned and they go through education, but end of the education, they're not able to have some jobs, and because they're not getting the jobs, they go back into the system and they get abused and they get neglected, and so what I'm trying to do is really help them on technology with a lot of on-the-job training, computer training to really rehab them and then put them back into the economy so they can. In other words, it's like teaching them how to fish rather than giving them a fish every single day. The second thing we are focusing on is really in our own backyard. I don't know how many of you know the statistics or not. In the city of Detroit, we have the highest illiteracy rate anywhere in a developing country like us. They're an advanced country like the US. We cannot afford to have in our own backyard with 50% of the people who cannot read and write, right? And that's issue number one. And issue number two, 75% of the kids are with single parent. And so the issue number one is really because they are not able to read and write, which can be easily predicted at age 3 and 4, if we intervene at the right time, we can make changes. But now we leave that opportunity that we keep chasing further down, and it's not helping us. So what we are trying to do in our own way is really helping kids to read and write. It's not rocket science. It's not complicated. We're not putting people on the Mars. This is very basic element. Anybody can do it. And so through a program called TutorMate, we try to pair our employees with at least 20 kids on a yearly basis, and then have them identify a single responsible adult as a role model. Two things that are killing our inner cities is really not able to read and write and lack of a role model. Is just as simple as that. And so that's what we are working on. And the second thing I'm also passionate about giving back is really focusing on STEM. STEM is really science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I want to talk about two things. We're trying to focus on the girls, especially in those areas. And the issue number one is really related to that is really, I don't know how many of you know or not, there's a stat out there in New York Times that the number of CEOs, men, please excuse me for saying this, but this is the fact of life. The number of CEOs with the name, just the name John, who run larger corporations, they outnumber all women CEOs put together, just by the name John. And the second issue is really on the STEM, where that 30%, 37% of the economy is going to go through the STEM jobs, STEM growth, compared to the whole US economy as a whole. So what that means is that in the years to come, if you're not part of those STEM field, you're going to miss out contributing to the US economy. Because the steel economy is gone, digital economy is gone. Now we are talking more about sharing economy, right? And so now look at all these sharing things that are already happening around us. Uber. 8 years ago, nobody would, if I say, 10 years ago, hey, can we share your car? We say, are you crazy, man? What the heck is going on with you, right? And then if that's not enough, we have started sharing homes through Airbnb. I don't know what else we're going to share in the years to come. As long as they don't share the spouses, we should be good. You know, so what I'm trying to say is that the economy itself is shifting, and also we have connected cars, autonomous vehicle, driverless cars, flying cars. You know, we are talking about land mobility. It's already people are working on air mobility, right? And so the girls, the younger generation, have to be prepared for these challenges, and our education system is not producing enough number of graduates to be in line with what the economy is looking for. And the issues are two. One is not, we cannot blame the government for everything. I know, you know, Brian is here, but we have to take the responsibility, right? We have to take the responsibility. What I mean is that we have to glamorize STEM education. We got to make sure that is the wave of the future. And as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator, as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, we got to promote those kind of things, because that's what is going to keep America ahead, right? And if we fall behind, we're going to be falling behind, and we will not be an economic superpower in the years to come, right? And so we need to stay competitive, and that can only come from the youth, and that can only come from where the economy is headed. And so that's one of the things that I'm focusing on, is really talk about STEM. How do we inspire enough women to get into that area, enough girls to get into the area, and also talk about, you know, equal pay and women's empowerment and all those things we talk about in our conference. And that's what I'm very passionate about, because, you know, last century we talked about, you know, women had the voting rights. I think this century is all about women empowerment, not just you know, talking about equal pay, but also being part of the boardroom. Right? Because if you're not part of the boardroom, you're not part of everything. I tell them that you got to make a lot of voice, and the voice comes through being in the boardroom, being, you know, controlling the money, and that's where the true empowerment comes. And the second thing is that, you know, about the youth also. I talked about the youth, so that's why we focus on a lot of education, and a lot of STEM is where I spend most of my time. The last thing I want to talk about is really making a movie. And so somebody asked me a question, how did you get into the movie? So in 2010, I got an award for an Inc. magazine. The reporter asked me the question, off-the-cuff remark. So he said, hey, what is that one thing that you want to do in life that you have not thought about or you wanted to do before you die? I said, oh my God, what kind of question is this? I thought to myself, oh, I just told him that I want to make a movie before I die, at least one movie. And I wanted to share a story, because that's what happened in my life, is that, so that I put that out in the universe about 6-7 years ago. And somehow, I don't know how, and GB one day came to me, and I was sitting in my office, hey, would you like to make a movie? I got a script. I said, what is it? He said, it's about Nain Rouge. I said, what is it? Nain Rouge. I said, what the heck? I don't even know what Nain Rouge is. So it's really the Devil's Night. We talked about Devil's Night, right? So the name of my movie is Devil's Night, Dawn of the Nain Rouge. Nain Rouge is the French word for red devil or red dwarf. So we have an annual parade that is happening every year in the city with a lot of this Nain Rouge. It goes back to the founder of Detroit Cadillac. So it's like it's like a supernatural creature kind of a thing. And so that's what we are working on. It's a crime thriller movie, and I'm making that movie here in Michigan with the Michigan talent. And so one other thing that I try to do is really learn whatever I learned in my business. I am trying to apply that here. At the same time, revive the movie industry in Michigan. Because one other thing I feel is that we have so much of talent here in our region. And so that's what I'm working on. So I want to conclude with those thoughts, is that life is short, and we have one life, and we have to pursue our dreams. It's not about making money. It's about leaving a legacy behind. It's like this. A boat is only useful if it starts sailing. It's no good if it's in the dock. Same thing with the life. It's no good if you die being preserved. What good is it? So you got to experience everything in life, because that's what you're supposed to do in life. Life is not about, going to a school, finding a girlfriend, getting married, producing babies, and leave the world. That's not called life. I think life is much beyond that. Life is all about, of course, you have to do all that, but it's about leaving an impact, leaving a mark, and you decide what kind of a mark that you wanted to do. And so I would encourage all of you to pursue your dreams, because one day your soul will thank you for doing that. Thank you so much for offering this opportunity.